So I meant to make this video back in March this year when it was officially 9 years since the release of Ground Zeroes. But we're almost at the end of 2023 and I'd kick myself if I didn't get this video out before the end of the year so that I can kinda get away with saying,
I'm afraid it's been 9 years. Damn it! Nosokoma! 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 Nurse! Calm down. Calm down.
I can't believe it's already been 9 years since the release of Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. I remember being in my 3rd year at university when this game was released. I got the game on PS3 and must have completed the main mission and side ops in a couple of hours, which, if you played the game, you will know is not a hard task. But completing Ground Zeroes in such a short time was a strange feeling. I loved the experience, but was ultimately left feeling unfulfilled by the end and wanting more. It's crazy to think that The Phantom Pain only came out about a year and a half later, as the wait honestly did feel like 9 years at the time. But in this video, I want to look back at Ground Zeroes after 9 years of perspective and see how it holds up today. After replaying Ground Zeroes, one thing that I think the game arguably does better than The Phantom Pain is atmosphere, particularly in the main mission. That opening cutscene with Skullface and Chico in the heavy rain really set an ominous tone for the game, which I kind of wish was captured a bit more in The Phantom Pain. Sure, Phantom Pain has its own atmospheric moments at times, but that feeling of overlooking Camp Omega at night in the pouring rain really hits differently. It evokes a similar feeling to when I'm standing on the heliport of Shadow Moses in MGS1. It also really adds to the stealthy element of the game, as you sneak around the camp at night, avoiding searchlights as you go and trying to stay in the shadows where possible. Whereas most of the side ops take place during the day, which, while this adds to the variety, doesn't quite feel as good to me. This was the first time we got to play in the anticipated Fox engine, which still looks beautiful in this game. I'm no video game designer, but the way light and reflections work in this engine just feels so realistic, especially the way it reflects off Big Boss's drenched sneaking suit. While we didn't get too many cutscenes in Ground Zeroes, to see the new motion captured facial animations was great and had me so excited for what we'd see in The Phantom Pain. It was also incredible to get a first look at the single take cinematography Kojima employed in MGS5. The camera just has such a fluidity to it, which I hadn't seen in any other video games up until this point. It makes you wonder if this is what influenced games such as God of War 2018 or Halo Infinite to employ a similar cinematography technique. After all, MGS is known for its cutscenes, so it might as well influence the industry with its cutscene style. This would also be the first time we truly got to hear Kiefer Sutherland's rendition of Snake, or more accurately, Big Boss. The firing of David Hayter really hurt the fanbase at the time, as he had brought so much to the various roles of Snake throughout the series, and truly loved the fanbase. The whole thing was just handled very poorly, but I'm glad to see that the fanbase stuck by Hayter, and that even Konami seems to be bringing Hayter back into the fold lately with the upcoming release of MGS Delta. But that's not to say that Kiefer Sutherland's version of Big Boss was bad. He did a fine job in the role, which I've come around to over the years. But it is very obviously Kiefer Sutherland. Some fans argue that his performance was more fitting to the grounded feeling of MGS5, but I do feel that with the right direction, David Hayter could have toned down his performance somewhat to fit the tone of the game. After all, you still had Robin Atkin Downes in the role of Cars Miller, who still gives a great performance as the character, and managed to give some iconic delivery.
They played us like a damn fiddle!
As I said, Sutherland's performance is perfectly fine for me, but it just lacked the iconic quality that Hayter brought in my opinion. In terms of gameplay, the game still holds up really well. It mostly plays like Phantom Pain, just without some of the gameplay features like being able to knock to distract guards, or some of the animations not being as smooth. But as stealth gameplay goes, it still feels great to play. Just the sandbox of Camp Omega alone was really fun to play in. I like how it introduced multiple ways to complete your objectives, as well as optional objectives like rescuing all of the prisoners instead of just Chico. It adds a sense of replayability, which I feel was essential to getting more bang from your buck with this game. Of course, you also had the side ops, which all brought their own fun challenges too. I especially like the side up where you had to rescue the main man himself, Hideo Kojima, a mission objective which would come up again in Phantom Pain. Then you had the extra ops, which you had to unlock by collecting all of the XOF patches scattered throughout Camp Omega. PlayStation got its own exclusive extra op called Deja Vu, where Camper Mega had been reskinned to look closer to Shadow Moses, whereas Xbox had the Jamais Vu extra op, which was exclusive at the time, where you got to play as Cyborg Raiden as he eliminated the Snatchers. These extra ops were fun little additions to the game, but I rarely replay them. I remember during the development of MGS5, there was a lot of talk from Kojima about how dark and serious he was going with this one, and I feel like Ground Zeroes really delivered on that promise, especially, for better and worse. MGS has always had a fine balance of seriousness and campiness, but with Ground Zeroes it felt like there were no room for jokes. You couldn't even get a cardboard box in this game. The bomb removal scene in the helicopter is still very hard to watch for me, and I remember feeling a little worried that Kojima had taken things a little too far at the time. I'm glad that we didn't get anything quite as gruesome as this in Phantom Pain, as I don't think my stomach could have taken much more. As I said earlier, I like the ominous atmosphere introduced in the game, but I'm not sure you needed gore to accomplish this. But overall, I think my appreciation of Ground Zeroes has grown over time. I used to be a bit sour on the game for it being sold separately, and while I still think that was a crappy move, there's no denying that the game does have its merits. While the Phantom Pain took a big risk with making MGS open world, it didn't always pay off for me. After a while, traversing between locations to reach your mission just became tedious and repetitive. I sometimes wonder if Phantom Pain just gave you 10 diverse but smaller locations to infiltrate, a bit like the different locations in MGS4, whether it would have worked better for the game. You could still have made the levels big enough to give a sense of variety to your infiltration options, like with Campo Mega, but without all the tedious traversal in between. But I guess we'll never know. At the end of the day, I'm a sucker for great atmosphere in video games, which is probably why MGS1 still remains my favourite in the series to this day. So getting to infiltrate Campo Mega, as it literally drips in atmosphere, is something that I'll never get bored of, even 9 years later. If you haven't played Ground Zeroes in a while, then I recommend checking it out again all these years later, as although it certainly is a very short experience, I do feel that it's an experience that stands out amongst the series in a unique way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Ground Zeroes in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time.